The dirt under Sarah Mitchell's boots had turned from Georgia red to Tennessee clay to Arkansas dust, and still she kept moving, because stopping meant dying or worse, going back. She had been running for 43 days when she first saw the town of Redemption Springs rising from the flat Texas prairie like a mirage, its weathered buildings baking under the merciless July sun of 1872. Her feet ached inside boots 2 sizes too large, stolen from a missionary barrel outside a church in Little Rock. The cotton dress she wore hung loose on her thin frame, faded from indigo to a tired gray-blue that matched the exhaustion in her eyes. Sarah was 21 years old, though she felt ancient, carved hollow by fear and the constant looking over her shoulder. Master Harrison Caldwell would not stop. She knew this the way she knew her own heartbeat, the way she knew the particular cadence of his horse's hooves on packed earth. He was a man who believed he owned things, and Sarah had been one of those things since she was 7 years old, inherited along with the plantation and the silver when his father died. The war had ended 7 years ago, but Caldwell acted as though Lincoln's proclamation was merely a suggestion, something that applied to other men in other places, but not to him, not to his property. She had run the night he told her she would bear his children, that he had decided it was time. The look in his eyes was not love or even lust, but ownership, pure and simple, and Sarah had known that if she stayed, some essential part of her soul would die even if her body continued breathing. So she had taken nothing but the clothes on her back and the small knife from the kitchen, and she had disappeared into the Georgia night like smoke. Now Texas stretched before her, vast and unforgiving, and Redemption Springs looked like it might have water and shade and perhaps a place she could rest for just one night before moving on. The main street was typical of frontier towns, with a saloon, a general store, a blacksmith, and a small church with a cross that leaned slightly to the left. Cowboys moved along the wooden sidewalks, spurs jingling, and a couple of women in respectable dresses hurried past with their eyes downcast. Sarah kept her head down too, made herself small and unremarkable as she walked toward the general store. Her stomach cramped with hunger. She had not eaten since yesterday morning, when a kind farm wife had given her biscuits and jam in exchange for help with the laundry. Before that, there had been 2 days of nothing but water from streams and the handful of pecans she had found beneath a tree. The general store was dim and blessedly cool inside, smelling of tobacco and leather and the sharp tang of pickles in a barrel. An older man with spectacles looked up from behind the counter, his expression neither welcoming nor hostile, just watchful in the way of people who lived in places where strangers could mean trouble. "Help you, miss?" Sarah's throat was dry as sand. "I'm looking for work," she said quietly. "Any kind of work. I can clean, cook, mend, tend animals. I am a hard worker." The man studied her for a long moment, taking in her worn clothes, her thin frame, the desperate edge in her voice. "Not much call for help around here," he said finally. "Mostly ranch work, and that is men's labor." Sarah's heart sank. She had heard the same words in the last 3 towns. She nodded, started to turn away, and then a voice spoke from the shadows near the back of the store. "I could use someone at my place." Sarah turned. The man who stepped into the light was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of whiskey held up to lamplight. He wore dusty denims, a work shirt, with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, and a hat that had seen better days. His face was angular and weathered, probably in his late 20s, with the kind of quiet strength that came from hard living. There was something careful in the way he looked at her, like he could see past the surface to the fear underneath. "Name is Cole Dawson," he said. "I have got a ranch about 5 miles west of town. Just me and my horse wrangler, and the place is going to pieces because neither of us can cook worth a damn, and the house looks like a cyclone went through it. Could use someone to help with meals, keeping things organized, maybe tending the kitchen garden if you have got a hand for growing things." Hope flickered in Sarah's chest, fragile as a candle flame. "I can do all those things," she said. "I am a good cook. I know herbs and vegetables. I am clean and organized." Cole nodded slowly. "Pay would not be much. Room and board, and maybe a few dollars a month when I sell horses. But it is honest work and a safe place to stay? Safe. The word hung in the air between them like a promise. Sarah did not know if anywhere was truly safe, not with Caldwell hunting her. But she was so tired of running, so tired of sleeping in ditches and barns, and once in a hollowed-out log that had spiders. "I accept," she said. "Thank you, Mr. Dawson." "Just Cole," he said, and there was the smallest hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. "Let me finish up my business here, and we will head out. You look like you could use a decent meal." 20 minutes later, Sarah sat beside Cole on the bench of a sturdy wagon pulled by 2 horses heading west out of Redemption Springs. The prairie stretched endlessly on all sides, golden grass rippling in the hot wind like an ocean. Cole did not ask questions, which Sarah appreciated. He pointed out landmarks, a distinctive rock formation, a dry creek bed that flooded in spring, the distant line of cottonwoods that marked his property line. "Been working this land for 5 years," he said. "My father had a small spread in Kansas, and I learned horses from him. Came to Texas after he passed, figured I would make my own way. Mostly I buy wild horses or problem horses and train them, then sell them to ranches and the army. Good money if you do not mind getting thrown a few times." "You do this alone?" Sarah asked. "Got a wrangler, Miguel Rodriguez. He is the best hand with horses I have ever seen, bar none. His family has been in Texas since before it was Texas. He does not talk much, but he is solid, and he can play guitar like you would not believe." The ranch appeared gradually, first a windmill turning lazily in the breeze, then a barn and corral, and finally a house. It was a modest structure, wood frame with a covered porch, painted white once but now faded to gray in places. It looked weathered but sturdy, the kind of place that had been built to last. The barn was larger than the house, which made sense for a horse ranch, and Sarah could see several animals in the corral, their coats gleaming in the afternoon sun. A man emerged from the barn as they pulled up, wiping his hands on his pants. He was shorter than Cole, stocky and powerful looking, with black hair and a mustache and eyes that assessed Sarah with quick intelligence. This would be Miguel. "This is Sarah Mitchell," Cole said, helping her down from the wagon. "She's going to help us not live like animals anymore. Sarah, this is Miguel Rodriguez, the man who keeps this operation running while I handle the business side." Miguel touched his hat brim. "Welcome, miss," he said. His English was slightly accented but clear. "It will be good to have proper food again. Cole burned the beans so bad last week I thought we would have to bury the pot." Sarah felt herself almost smile, the expression strange on her face after weeks of fear. "I promise not to burn the beans," she said. Cole showed her the house. Inside, it was clear that 2 men had been living without female influence, clothes draped over chairs, dishes stacked in the dry sink, dust on every surface. But the bones were good, with a main room that served as kitchen and living space, 2 small bedrooms, and a loft accessed by a ladder. The furniture was simple but well made. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. "You can have my room," Cole said. "I will bunk in the barn with Miguel." "I cannot take your room," Sarah protested. "You can and you will," Cole said firmly. "It is not proper otherwise, and besides, it is cooler in the barn this time of year. Now I imagine you are hungry. Let me show you where everything is, and you can make us all something to eat if you are up for it." Sarah was more than up for it. Cooking was familiar, something she could do without thinking, and having a task helped settle the jittering anxiety that lived in her chest. The kitchen was reasonably well stocked: flour, cornmeal, dried beans, salt pork, eggs from chickens she could hear clucking outside, an onion, and some wizened potatoes. She found a cast iron skillet, got a fire going in the stove, and set to work. An hour later, the 3 of them sat at the rough wooden table eating fried potatoes with onions and salt pork, scrambled eggs, and cornbread with butter. It was simple food, but Sarah had put care into it, and she watched both men eat like they had been starving. "Lord have mercy," Miguel said around a mouthful of cornbread. "This is the best thing I have eaten in 6 months." Cole nodded his agreement. His eyes met Sarah's across the table, and there was something warm in his gaze, something that made her feel seen in a way that did not make her afraid. "You have got a gift," he said simply. That night, Sarah lay in Cole's bed, which he had hastily changed the sheets on, embarrassed, and listened to the unfamiliar sounds of the Texas night. Coyotes yipped in the distance. The windmill creaked. An owl called from somewhere near the barn. She should have felt vulnerable, alone in a strange place with two men she did not know, but instead she felt something she had not experienced in weeks: the possibility of safety. She let herself cry quietly into the pillow, releasing some of the terror she had been carrying. Then she slept, deeply and without dreams, for the first time since Georgia. The next days fell into a rhythm. Sarah woke before dawn and made breakfast: biscuits and gravy, eggs, bacon, hot cakes with syrup. The men ate gratefully and headed out to work with the horses. She cleaned the house from top to bottom, scrubbing floors and washing windows and beating the dust from curtains. She did laundry in a big tub, hanging clothes on a line strung between two posts where they dried stiff in the hot wind. She tended the kitchen garden, which had gone to weeds and seed, coaxing it back to life with water and patience. Cole and Miguel worked from sunup to sundown, training horses in the corral. Sarah would watch sometimes from the porch as she shelled peas or mended shirts. Cole moved with an easy grace around the animals, never hurried, never harsh. She saw him spend an hour just standing with a nervous mare, letting her get used to his presence before he even attempted to touch her. There was kindness in the way he worked, a respect for the horses that spoke to something deep in his character. In the evenings after supper, Miguel would sometimes play his guitar on the porch while the heat slowly bled from the day. He played songs from his childhood, Mexican melodies that were haunting and beautiful, and Cole would sit whittling or mending tack, and Sarah would shell beans or do handwork, and it felt almost like family. But Sarah never fully relaxed. Part of her was always listening for hoofbeats that did not belong, always watching the horizon for a rider who would mean the end of everything. She had told Cole her name, but nothing of her past, and he had not pushed, though she sometimes caught him watching her with questions in his eyes. It was on the 18th day that Caldwell came. Sarah was in the kitchen garden pulling weeds in the morning cool before the day got too hot, when she heard horses, two of them coming fast from the direction of town. She straightened, shading her eyes, and her heart stopped beating for one terrible moment. She knew that horse, a big bay gelding with a white blaze, and the man riding him was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a fine coat despite the heat, his face florid and cruel under an expensive hat. Harrison Caldwell had found her. Sarah dropped the weeds and ran for the barn, her breath coming in panicked gasps. Cole was in the corral working with a young stallion, but he looked up at her approach, and whatever he saw in her face made him vault over the fence immediately. "What is wrong?" "He is here," Sarah gasped. "My former master. He is here. I have to run. I have to go right now." Cole's expression went hard. "Go to the barn and stay with Miguel. Do not come out no matter what you hear. You do not understand. He will hurt you. He will—" "Go." Cole's voice was steel. "Now, Sarah, trust me." Sarah ran to the barn on shaking legs. Miguel took one look at her face and pulled her into an empty stall, positioning himself between her and the door. "Stay quiet," he murmured. Through the gaps in the barn wood, Sarah could see Caldwell ride into the yard, another man beside him, his overseer, a vicious brute named Talbot. Cole walked out to meet them, moving with deliberate calm, his hands loose at his sides. "Help you, gentlemen?" Cole asked. Caldwell pulled his horse to a stop, looking down at Cole with the arrogance of a man who had never been denied anything. "I am looking for a woman, a Negro woman, about 20 years old, slim, answers to Sarah. I have reason to believe she came through Redemption Springs." Sarah's whole body went cold. Negro. She was light-skinned enough to pass for white most places, the legacy of her grandmother's rape by a plantation owner, but Caldwell would not let that complexity save her. Cole's expression did not change. Can't say I have seen anyone like that. But then I do not spend much time in town, mostly keep to myself out here. You mind if we look around? Caldwell's voice was pleasant, but there was an edge underneath. Matter of fact, I do, Cole said evenly. This is private property, and I do not take kindly to strangers poking around my land. If you've got legal business, go to the sheriff in town and get a warrant. Otherwise, I will ask you to move along. Caldwell's face darkened. That woman is my property. She ran away from my plantation in Georgia. I have every right to reclaim what belongs to me. The war ended 7 years ago, Cole said, and his voice was cold as creek water in winter. Nobody owns anybody anymore. That is the law. The law is what men with power say it is, Caldwell snapped. Now get out of my way before I have Talbot here teach you some manners. Talbot grinned and started to dismount, his hand going to the knife at his belt. But he never made it off the horse because Cole moved with shocking speed, pulling a revolver from behind his back and pointing it directly at Caldwell's chest. I do not think so, Cole said softly. Here is what is going to happen. You're going to turn those horses around and ride north. I saw fresh tracks heading north yesterday. Might be a woman traveling alone. You should follow those. You are lying, Caldwell said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. Maybe, Cole agreed, but I am the one with the gun, so it does not much matter. Now ride out and do not come back. Next time I see you on my property, I will shoot first and skip the conversation. For a long moment, Caldwell stared at Cole with pure hatred burning in his eyes. Then he jerked his reins, wheeling his horse around. This is not over, he said. That woman is mine, and I will find her. She is not here, Cole said. Try north. Toward Indian Territory, I heard talk of runaways heading that direction. Caldwell spat in the dirt and kicked his horse into a gallop, Talbot following. They rode north out of the yard, dust rising in their wake. Cole stood motionless until they were out of sight. Then he holstered the gun and walked quickly to the barn. They are gone, he said. Sarah emerged from the stall on trembling legs. He will be back, she whispered. When he does not find tracks going north, he will come back. Not if he thinks you went north, Cole said. Miguel, can you and I make it look like a lone rider headed north from here? Backtrack from the road, make it obvious enough that he will find it? Miguel nodded slowly. It can be done. It will take time, but yes. Then let us do it now, before he gets suspicious and doubles back. Cole looked at Sarah, and his expression was gentle despite the steel underneath. You are safe here. I promise you that. Why are you helping me? Sarah asked, tears burning in her eyes. You do not know me. I could bring you nothing but trouble. Because it is right, Cole said simply, because no person should own another person, and because I will be damned if I let a man like that take a woman against her will. Now, you go back to the house and bolt the door. Miguel and I have got work to do. They spent the next 3 hours creating a false trail. Miguel was a genius at it, knowing exactly how to make it look like a rider had passed through, heading north toward the Red River and Indian Territory beyond. They laid tracks from the road to the ranch and then continuing north made it look like someone had stopped to water a horse at the creek, even scattered some broken biscuit crumbs like a traveler eating a quick meal. Sarah watched from the window, her heart in her throat, until they returned. It is done, Cole said. If Caldwell is any kind of tracker, he will find those signs and follow them north. By the time he figures out it is a false trail, you will be long gone from here. Long gone? Sarah's stomach dropped. You want me to leave? Cole shook his head quickly. No, hell no, but we need to make it so if he comes back, he cannot find you. There is a line shack about 2 hours west of here, up in some rocky country. It is where I stay during roundup sometimes. It is small but solid, with a good spring nearby. You can stay there for a while until we know Caldwell has given up and moved on. I cannot ask you to... You are not asking? I am offering. Cole's eyes were steady on hers. Sarah, I do not know your whole story, and you do not have to tell me. But I know a woman running from something evil when I see one, and I am not going to turn you out. We will see this through. Sarah felt something crack open in her chest, some tight knot of fear and loneliness that had lived there for so long she had forgotten it could loosen. Thank you, she whispered. They packed supplies that afternoon: food, blankets, a rifle, ammunition, matches, candles, everything Sarah would need to survive on her own for a few weeks. Cole loaded it all into saddlebags and onto a pack mule, then saddled a gentle mare named Rosie. I will take you there before dark, he said. Show you the place. Make sure you have got everything you need. Then I will come check on you every few days, bring fresh supplies and news. The ride west took them through increasingly rough country. The flat prairie gave way to broken land, all gullies and rocky outcrops and twisted mesquite trees. It was harsh landscape, but beautiful in its starkness, and Sarah found herself breathing easier the farther they got from the ranch. The line shack was tucked into a canyon, hidden from casual view, with rock walls rising on 3 sides and a clear view of anyone approaching from the 4th. It was a single room, maybe 12 feet square, built of rough timber and stone with a solid door and 1 window with shutters. Inside was a narrow bed, a small stove, a table and chair, and some shelves. Simple, but it would do. Cole unloaded the supplies, showing Sarah where everything was, how to work the stove, where the spring was for fresh water. He filled the lantern with oil, stacked firewood, checked that the roof did not leak. He was thorough and patient, and Sarah realized he was stalling, not wanting to leave her alone. I will be fine, she said gently. Cole turned to face her. In the dimness of the shack, with the last light of day filtering through the window, his face was all plains and shadows. I do not like leaving you out here by yourself, he admitted. I have been by myself for weeks. This is safer than anything I have had since Georgia. He nodded slowly. I will be back in 3 days with more food. If you need me before then, fire 3 shots in the air and I will come running. You understand? 3 shots, and I will be here as fast as my horse can carry me. I understand. Cole hesitated, then reached out and took her hand. His palm was calloused and warm, and Sarah felt the touch go through her like electricity. You are brave, he said quietly, braver than most men I know. Whatever you are running from, whatever happened to you, you survived it, and you are still here. That takes strength. Sarah's throat tightened. Sometimes I do not feel very strong. Strength is not about never being afraid. It is about being terrified and doing what needs doing anyway. He squeezed her hand gently, then released it. I should get back before full dark. You bolt that door behind me and do not open it for anyone but me or Miguel. We will knock 5 times, 2 fast and 3 slow. Anyone else? You hide and stay quiet. 5 times, 2 fast, 3 slow. Good. Cole moved to the door, then paused. Sarah, I am glad you came to Redemption Springs. I am glad you walked into that general store. So am I, Sarah said, and meant it with her whole heart. After he left, Sarah bolted the door and sat on the narrow bed, listening to the sound of his horse's hooves fade into the distance. The silence that followed was profound, broken only by the wind and the distant cry of a hawk. She was alone, but not lonely. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she could breathe. The next days passed slowly. Sarah woke with the sun and fell into a routine, fetching water from the spring, making simple meals on the small stove, reading the battered copy of Shakespeare's sonnets that Cole had packed in the supplies. She mended her clothes, washed in the cold spring water, and spent hours sitting on a rock outside the shack, watching the play of light on the canyon walls. It was peaceful in a way she had never experienced. All her life, she had been owned, and even in freedom she had been running, constantly moving, constantly afraid. Here, in this hidden canyon, she could just be. She thought about her mother, who had died of fever when Sarah was 12, and wished she could tell her about this place. Her mother had dreamed of freedom, but never lived to see it. On the 3rd day she heard hoofbeats in the late afternoon. Her heart jumped, but then came the knock, 2 quick, 3 slower, and she opened the door to find Cole leading a pack horse loaded with supplies. Brought you some things, he said, smiling. Fresh bread, eggs, coffee, some books I thought you might like, and Miguel sent along a jar of his mother's preserves. They unloaded together, and Sarah made coffee on the small stove. They sat outside on the rocks, drinking from tin cups, and Cole told her about the ranch, a new horse he was training, a rattlesnake Miguel had killed near the barn, the fact that the chickens were laying well. Any sign of Caldwell? Sarah asked, her stomach tightening. Cole shook his head. I rode into town yesterday, asked around careful-like. The general store owner said 2 men matching their description came through asking questions, then headed north 3 days ago. I think they took the bait. Sarah let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. How long do you think I should stay out here? Let us give it a couple more weeks, make sure they have moved on. Then you can come back to the ranch if you want. Or, he hesitated, or if you feel you need to keep moving, I can help you get somewhere safer. California, maybe. Or north to Kansas, where there are communities of freed men. You would help me get to California? Sarah asked in wonder. I would help you get to the moon if that is what it took to keep you safe, Cole said, and there was something in his voice that made Sarah's breath catch. She looked at him, really looked at him. The strong lines of his face, the kindness in his eyes, the way he held his coffee cup like it was precious. This man who had taken her in without questions, who had faced down her pursuer, who had hidden her and brought her supplies and treated her like she mattered. Something warm unfurled in her chest, something she had thought long dead. Why are you doing this? She asked softly. The truth, Cole. He was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the canyon walls painted gold by the setting sun. My mother was Comanche, he said finally. My father met her during a trading expedition, fell in love, married her proper despite both their families pitching fits about it. She died when I was 10, fever took her quick. But before that, some folks in town made life hard for her, called her savage, said she did not belong, treated her like she was less than human. My father stood up for her every time, never wavered, never backed down. He taught me that the measure of a man is not in how he treats people who can help him, but in how he treats people who cannot. When I saw you in that store, desperate and scared and trying so hard to be brave, I saw my mother. And I thought about what my father would do. So I did it. Sarah felt tears slip down her cheeks. Your father sounds like a good man. He was the best man I ever knew, Cole said. I hope I am half the man he was. You are, Sarah said fiercely. You are exactly that kind of man. Their eyes met and held, and something passed between them, some recognition or understanding or possibility. Cole reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently wiped the tears from her cheek with his thumb. His touch was so tender it made her heart ache. I should head back, he said roughly. Sun will be down soon. But Sarah, you are not alone in this. Whatever happens, you have got me and Miguel in your corner. Remember that. After he left, Sarah sat outside until full dark, her fingers touching the place on her cheek where his thumb had been. She had thought her heart had been beaten into something small and hard and incapable of softness, but sitting there under the vast Texas stars, she felt it opening like a flower. Cole came every 3 days like clockwork, always bringing supplies and news. On the second visit, he brought a book of poetry. On the third, a harmonica, because he said the silence must be oppressive. On the fourth, wildflowers picked from the prairie, which he presented awkwardly, his ears going red. Thought they might brighten the place up, he muttered. Sarah put them in a tin cup filled with water and set them on the table where they glowed like small suns. They are beautiful, she said. Thank you. They fell into an easy pattern during his visits. Sarah would make coffee or a simple meal, and they would sit and talk about horses, about books, about their childhoods, about everything and nothing. Cole told her about learning to train horses from his father, about the first time he got thrown and broke his arm, about his dream of building the ranch into something substantial. Sarah slowly and carefully told him about her mother, about learning to cook from the plantation cook who had been kind to her, about the secret pleasure she took in reading books stolen from the master's library. She did not tell him about the beatings or the nights locked in the cellar, or the constant fear that had defined her existence. Some things were too dark to speak aloud yet. But Cole seemed to understand the silences, the places she could not go. He never pushed. On his 6th visit, 2.5 weeks after Sarah had moved to the line shack, Cole brought news. "I think it is safe for you to come back to the ranch," he said. "I went to Redemption Springs again and asked around. Caldwell and his man were spotted 4 days ago near the Red River, still heading north. They are gone, Sarah. I think they are really gone." Sarah felt relief and something else, something that felt almost like disappointment. Here in the canyon, with Cole visiting every few days, she had found a strange kind of peace. The thought of returning to the world, even to the relative safety of the ranch, made her anxious, but she could not live in a line shack forever. "All right," she said. "When should we go?" "How about tomorrow morning? That will give you time to pack up, and we can take it slow on the ride back." That night, alone in the line shack for the last time, Sarah acknowledged the truth she had been avoiding. She was falling in love with Cole Dawson. It was foolish and dangerous and impractical, but it was also undeniable. He had shown her kindness without expectation, had protected her without trying to own her, had treated her like a person of worth and dignity. And somewhere in the quiet conversations and gentle gestures, her battered heart had decided to trust again, to hope again, to feel again. She did not know if he felt the same. He was kind to everyone. She had seen him with his horses, with Miguel, even with strangers in town. Maybe she was reading too much into his gentleness. Maybe she was just another responsibility to him, a problem to be solved. But she thought about the way he looked at her sometimes, like she was something precious. The way his voice softened when he said her name. The wildflowers. Maybe, she let herself think, maybe. Cole arrived mid-morning with 2 horses, and they loaded up the pack mule and set out. The ride back was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. The sun was hot and high, and the prairie shimmered with heat mirages. They stopped once to water the horses at a creek, and Sarah watched Cole move with easy confidence, the muscles in his shoulders shifting under his shirt as he worked. When they reached the ranch, Miguel came out of the barn, grinning. "Welcome back, Miss Sarah," he called. "I hope you're ready to cook, because Cole has been making tortillas, and they are terrible, like eating leather." Sarah laughed, the sound surprising her. "I will make proper tortillas tonight," she promised. Settling back into the ranch felt both familiar and new. Sarah took over the kitchen with renewed energy, grateful to have a proper stove and good ingredients again. She made dinner, beef stew with vegetables from the garden, fresh tortillas that Miguel declared were heaven, and apple cobbler from dried apples. After dinner, the 3 of them sat on the porch as they had before, Miguel playing his guitar, the night air finally cooling. But something had shifted. Sarah was aware of Cole in a way she had not been before, conscious of every glance, every accidental brush of hands, every moment their eyes met across the porch. Days turned into weeks. Sarah's fear of Caldwell gradually lessened as more time passed without any sign of him. She heard through town gossip that 2 men matching their description had been seen in Indian Territory, then later near Fort Smith, always heading north and east. It seemed Cole's misdirection had worked. Life at the ranch was good. Sarah had never experienced anything like it. The freedom to move about as she pleased, to speak her mind, to have her work appreciated rather than expected and punished when imperfect. Cole paid her the few dollars he had promised, and she saved every penny in a tin under her bed, a small nest egg that represented possibility. But more than the freedom or the safety or the honest work, it was Cole himself who made her days bright. She learned his rhythms, his moods, his habits. She learned that he liked his coffee strong and black, that he hummed when he was working on something complicated, that he was gentle with everything, horses, tools, people. She learned that he read poetry at night before bed, that he was fiercely loyal to those he considered his, that he had a scar on his left shoulder from a horse bite when he was 16. and she learned that she was not imagining the way he looked at her. There was something in his eyes when they landed on her, something warm and wanting and careful. He found reasons to be near her, helping carry water, repairing a loose board on the porch where she sat to shell peas, asking her opinion on which horses to buy. The tension between them grew like summer heat, building and building with no release. They were achingly polite with each other, careful not to touch, careful not to cross lines. But Sarah could feel the pull, the wanting, the possibility shimmering between them like heat waves. It was Miguel who finally lost patience with them both. 6 weeks after Sarah's return to the ranch, he set down his coffee cup at breakfast and said bluntly, "You two are driving me crazy." Cole looked up, startled. "What?" "You." Miguel pointed at Cole. "You look at Sarah like a man dying of thirst looks at water. And you." He pointed at Sarah. "You watch Cole like he is the sun and you are a flower. This dancing around each other is ridiculous. Either do something about it or stop making moon eyes across my breakfast." Sarah felt her face flame with heat. Cole looked equally embarrassed, his ears going red the way they did when he was flustered. They stared at each other across the table, and Sarah saw her own longing reflected in his eyes. "I did not want to presume," Cole said quietly, his eyes never leaving Sarah's. "You have been through hell. The last thing you need is another man trying to claim you." "You would not be claiming me," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You would be asking me. There is a difference." "Is there something to ask about?" Cole's voice was rough with hope. Sarah stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "Yes," she said, "there is." Cole stood too, moving around the table slowly, like she was a nervous horse he did not want to spook. He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, could smell leather and horses and the particular scent that was just him. "Sarah Mitchell," he said, and his voice shook slightly. "I have been halfway in love with you since you walked into that general store looking fierce and terrified. I am all the way in love with you now. If you would let me court you proper, with respect and patience and all the time you need, it would make me the happiest man in Texas." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too," she said. "I did not think I could love anyone after everything, but you made me believe in good men again, in good people, in the possibility of happiness." Cole reached up slowly and cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the tears that spilled down her cheeks. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. "Yes," Sarah breathed. He lowered his head and kissed her so gently it made her heart ache. His lips were soft and warm, and he tasted like coffee and hope. Sarah's hands came up to grip his shirt, anchoring herself to him, and the kiss deepened, becoming something more urgent, more real. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Miguel was grinning from ear to ear. "Finally," he said, "now I can eat my breakfast in peace." They laughed, the tension breaking, and Cole pulled Sarah into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. She could hear his heart hammering beneath her ear, fast and strong and alive. "We will take this slow," Cole murmured into her hair. "Whatever pace you need, I am not going anywhere." "I know," Sarah said, and she did know, with bone-deep certainty. Cole was nothing like Caldwell, nothing like any man she had known. He was safety and kindness, and the kind of love that freed rather than imprisoned. The courtship that followed was sweet and slow and everything Sarah had never known she wanted. Cole brought her wildflowers every week, picked fresh from the prairie. They took walks in the evening after the day's work was done, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's stories. He held her hand, and later, after she had grown comfortable with his touch, he put his arm around her shoulders. He kissed her in the doorway of the barn, in the shadow of the windmill, on the porch under the stars. Each kiss was a question, and she answered yes, yes, yes. Miguel watched them with satisfaction and played romantic songs on his guitar in the evenings, serenading them with ballads about love and longing. "You are welcome," he would say whenever they thanked him, grinning. 2 months after that breakfast conversation, Cole proposed properly. He took Sarah on a ride out to a high point on the ranch where you could see for miles in every direction, prairie stretching endlessly, the sky so big it made you feel small and infinite at the same time. "This land is harsh," Cole said, standing beside her, looking out at the view. "It asks everything from you and gives back only what you fight for. But it is honest, and it is beautiful, and it is free. Sarah, I cannot offer you an easy life. The ranch is hard work, and there is always something that needs doing, and some years we will have more money than others, but I can offer you honesty and partnership and love that will not quit. I can offer you freedom and respect and a home where you are cherished. If you will have me, I will spend every day for the rest of my life making sure you know you are valued and loved and safe." He knelt in the prairie grass, pulled a simple gold band from his pocket. "Will you marry me, Sarah Mitchell?" Sarah looked down at him. This good man who had saved her and sheltered her and shown her that love did not have to hurt. The sun lit his hair golden brown, and his eyes were steady and sure, and she had never been more certain of anything in her life. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you, Cole Dawson." He slipped the ring on her finger, a perfect fit, simple and strong, and stood to kiss her. The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of sage and sun-warmed earth, and Sarah felt joy so sharp it was almost painful. They were married a month later in the small church in Redemption Springs with Miguel as witness and half the town in attendance. Sarah wore a simple dress of cream-colored cotton that she had sewn herself with lace at the collar and cuffs. Cole wore a new shirt and his best pants, his hair slicked back, looking nervous and happy and incredibly handsome. The preacher was a kind older man who kept the ceremony short and sweet. When he pronounced them man and wife, Cole kissed Sarah with such enthusiasm that the congregation laughed and applauded. They walked out of the church into the bright October sunshine as husband and wife, and Sarah felt like she might float away with happiness. The townspeople had organized a celebration. Tables set up in front of the church with food and drink, Miguel's guitar providing music, children running and playing. It was simple and joyful, and Sarah was overwhelmed by the kindness of these people who had accepted her without question. An older woman named Mrs. Henderson, who ran the boarding house, pulled Sarah aside. "I want you to know," she said quietly, "that you are welcome here, truly welcome. This town has its share of narrow minds, but most of us believe in judging people by their character, not their past or their blood. You are a good woman, and Cole is a good man, and we are glad to have you both as part of this community." Sarah hugged her, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. After a lifetime of being seen as property, being welcomed as a person was almost more than she could bear. As the sun set and the celebration wound down, Cole and Sarah rode back to the ranch together on Rosie, Cole's arms around Sarah, her back pressed against his chest. The prairie was painted gold and orange by the dying light, and Sarah thought she had never seen anything more beautiful. Miguel had made himself scarce, leaving them the house for their wedding night. Cole carried Sarah over the threshold, making her laugh, and set her down gently in the main room. Someone, probably Miguel, had tidied up and left wildflowers on the table. The nervousness Sarah had felt earlier returned, sharp and insistent. She had been owned by Caldwell but had escaped before he could violate her body. She was innocent, and though she trusted Cole completely, the fear lingered. Cole seemed to sense her anxiety. He took her hand and led her to sit on the sofa, then knelt in front of her. "Sarah, we do not have to do anything tonight, or tomorrow night, or the night after that. We have all the time in the world. I meant what I said. I will not take anything you are not ready to give." Sarah reached out and touched his face, feeling the scratch of stubble under her palm. "I want to," she said. "I am just nervous. Everything I know about this is colored by fear and running. I do not know how to be with someone who loves me." "Then we will figure it out together," Cole said simply. He stood and held out his hand. "Come to bed with me. We will just lie together and we will see where it goes. If all we do is sleep, that is enough. You are enough, Sarah, just as you are." They went to the bedroom. Their bedroom now, not his or hers, but theirs. Cole lit a lamp, turning it low so the room was filled with soft golden light. Sarah's hands shook as she began to unbutton her dress, but Cole moved behind her, gently moving her hands aside. "Let me," he murmured. He undid the button slowly, his fingers careful and sure, and the intimacy of it made Sarah shiver. When the dress loosened, she let it fall to the floor, standing in her chemise and petticoat. Cole's breath hitched, and when she turned to face him, his eyes were dark with want, but also with tenderness. "You are so beautiful," he said. Sarah helped him with his shirt, her fingers tracing the muscles of his chest and shoulders, the scar from the horsebite, the strong, steady beat of his heart. They shed the rest of their clothes slowly, learning each other, and when they finally lay down together on the bed, skin against skin, Sarah felt a rightness settle into her bones. Cole made love to her with patience and care, always asking permission, always making sure she was comfortable, always putting her pleasure before his own. There was pain at first, a sharp, bright sting that made her gasp, but Cole held her through it, murmuring reassurances. And then the pain faded into something else, something that built and built until Sarah cried out with the intensity of it. Afterward, they lay tangled together, sweat slicked and breathing hard, and Cole pressed kisses to her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "I love you," he said. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Sarah whispered, and felt the truth of it in every cell of her body. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and Sarah slept deeply and dreamlessly for the first time in years. The months that followed were the happiest of Sarah's life. She and Cole built a life together, a partnership based on mutual respect and love and hard work. She managed the house and garden and chickens and started helping with the horses too, discovering she had a knack for the gentling work. Cole taught her to ride properly, patiently working with her until she was comfortable in the saddle. Miguel continued to live in the barn, though Sarah and Cole tried multiple times to convince him to take one of the rooms in the house. "You need your privacy," he said, grinning, "and I do not need to hear the sounds of newlyweds through the walls, thank you." The ranch prospered. Cole's reputation as a horse trainer grew, and they had more business than they could handle. They hired another hand, a young man named Tommy who was green but eager to learn. The herd expanded. They added onto the barn and built a proper chicken coop and fenced in more pasture. Sarah made friends in town, Mrs. Henderson and the school teacher, Miss Peterson, and the doctor's wife, Mrs. Chen. She joined the church ladies' auxiliary and contributed preserves to the community pantry, and slowly became part of the fabric of Redemption Springs. There were hard moments, too. Once, Sarah saw a man on the street who, from behind, looked like Caldwell, and she froze solid with terror until he turned around and she saw it was a stranger. Cole found her shaking in the alley beside the general store and held her until the panic passed. "He cannot hurt you anymore," Cole murmured. "You are free, Sarah. You are mine only because you choose to be, and if you ever stop choosing me, I would let you go with love. You are not owned. You are free." Another time, a drifter came through town making comments about Sarah's skin, asking pointed questions about where she came from, suggesting she might be a runaway. Cole knocked him flat with one punch and told him to get out of Redemption Springs and not come back. The sheriff, a fair-minded man named Tucker, backed Cole's play and escorted the drifter to the town limits. But these moments were rare. Mostly, life was good. In the spring of 1873, Sarah discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks. The exhaustion, the sensitivity to smells, the way her monthly bleeding did not come. but she waited to be sure before telling Cole. When she finally shared the news over breakfast one morning, Cole's face went through about 5 different emotions in as many seconds: shock, joy, fear, wonder, and then a blazing happiness that made him look 10 years younger. "A baby," he breathed. "We are going to have a baby." He came around the table and knelt beside her chair, pressing his face against her still, flat stomach. "Hello in there," he said softly. "I am your papa, and I already love you more than anything." Sarah ran her fingers through his hair, her own eyes wet. "We are going to be parents," she said wonderingly. Miguel was thrilled when they told him, immediately declaring himself honorary uncle and vowing to teach the child guitar and how to ride before they could walk. Mrs. Henderson organized the town women to make baby clothes and blankets. Miss Peterson loaned Sarah books on child rearing. The pregnancy was mostly easy. Sarah had some sickness in the early months, but it passed, and she bloomed with health as the baby grew. Cole was absurdly protective, trying to prevent her from doing any work until Sarah finally told him firmly that she was pregnant, not dying, and she would continue living her life. "Thank you very much." As her belly swelled, Cole would talk to the baby every night, his hand resting on the tight curve of her stomach. He told stories about his parents, about the ranch, about all the things they would do together as a family. Sarah would lie there listening, falling in love with him all over again, imagining the life they were building together. In late November, as the weather turned cold and the prairie grass faded to brown, Sarah went into labor. Mrs. Henderson and Mrs. Chen attended her, experienced women who had delivered dozens of babies between them. Cole was banished to the porch with Miguel and Tommy, where he paced like a caged animal for 14 hours. The pain was immense, beyond anything Sarah had imagined, but Mrs. Henderson held her hand and Mrs. Chen coached her breathing. And finally, as the sun was setting, Sarah's son entered the world with a furious squall. "A boy," Mrs. Henderson said, beaming, wrapping the baby in a blanket. "A healthy, beautiful boy." She laid him on Sarah's chest, and Sarah looked down at the tiny red face, the shock of dark hair, the miniature fingers that gripped her thumb with surprising strength. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "Hello, my son." Cole burst through the door seconds later, his face wild with anxiety. "Is Sarah all right? Is the baby?" He stopped, seeing Sarah sitting up in bed holding their child, and his face crumpled. "Oh," he said softly. He came to the bed slowly, almost reverently, and Sarah shifted the baby so Cole could see him better. "Meet your son," she said. Cole reached out with one finger and touched the baby's cheek, so gentle it made Sarah's heart ache. "He is perfect," Cole said, his voice rough with emotion. "He is the most perfect thing I have ever seen. What should we name him?" They had discussed names for months but never settled on one. Now, looking at her son's face, Sarah knew. "Samuel," she said, "after your father. Samuel Dawson." Cole's eyes filled with tears. "Samuel," he repeated. "Yes, that's exactly right." Little Sam was a good baby, healthy and strong lunged, and he wrapped all the adults around his tiny finger immediately. Cole was a natural father, patient and loving, happy to walk the floor with Sam when he was fussy, to change diapers and help with feedings. Miguel carved toys and sang Spanish lullabies. Tommy turned out to be surprisingly good at making funny faces that got Sam laughing. Sarah had never known she could feel love this huge, this all-encompassing. She loved Cole with her whole heart, but the love she felt for Sam was different, fierce and primal and protective. She would kill or die for this child without hesitation. As Sam grew from infant to baby to toddler, the ranch grew too. They had 2 more good years of business, saved money, bought more land. Cole built an addition onto the house, 2 more bedrooms and a proper washroom. They hired another hand, talked about building a second barn. Sarah's past faded further into memory. She had not heard anything about Caldwell in years and had begun to believe she was truly free of him. The fear that had defined her life for so long loosened its grip, and she learned to live without constantly looking over her shoulder. In 1875, when Sam was 2 years old, Sarah became pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the first. She was sicker, more tired, and the baby sat heavy and low. But in June, she gave birth to a healthy daughter they named Grace, after Cole's mother. Grace was different from Sam. Smaller, quieter, with Cole's amber eyes and Sarah's delicate features. Where Sam was all energy and noise, Grace was contemplative, watching the world with serious eyes. Cole loved her with the same fierce devotion he showed Sam, and Sarah felt their family click into place, complete. The years that followed were full and rich. Sam learned to ride almost before he could walk, trotting around the corral on a patient mare named Daisy while Cole watched with pride. Grace followed her brother everywhere, determined to do everything he did despite being 2 years younger. They were wild and sunburned and happy, growing up with the freedom of the prairie and the security of parents who adored them. Miguel eventually married a widow from town named Rosa, a pretty woman with 2 children of her own, and they built a small house on the far end of the ranch property. Tommy met a girl, got married, started a family. The ranch employed 6 hands now, was known across 3 states for quality horses. They were prosperous, respected, part of the community. Sarah sometimes thought about the girl she had been, terrified and running, certain she would never know safety or love or peace. That girl seemed like someone from another lifetime. The woman she had become was strong and sure, with a home and a family and a future that stretched bright before her. In the spring of 1877, when Sam was 4 and Grace was 2, a stranger rode up to the ranch. He was old and weathered, with white hair and tired eyes, and when Sarah came out onto the porch, he removed his hat respectfully. "Beg pardon, ma'am," he said. "I'm looking for Cole Dawson." "He is in the corral," Sarah said, gesturing. Something about the man made her uneasy, though she could not have said why. Cole came when she called, wiping his hands on his pants. He looked at the stranger with a questioning expression. "Help you? You Cole Dawson, the horse trainer?" "I am." The man nodded slowly. "My name is George Freeman. I was overseer on the Caldwell plantation in Georgia, long time ago. I heard about you, about how you helped a runaway woman back in '72. I wanted to come tell you something." Sarah's blood went cold. Cole moved to stand beside her, his hand finding hers, his body tense and ready. "Go on," Cole said evenly. "Harrison Caldwell is dead," Freeman said. "Died 3 years ago. Drank himself into an early grave, bitter and broke. The plantation went to creditors, got sold off in pieces. I thought you should know. Thought the woman should know if she is still with you. She does not have to run anymore." Sarah felt the words hit her like a physical blow. Dead. Caldwell was dead. The monster who had owned her, who had chased her across 3 states, who had haunted her nightmares. He was gone. "Why are you telling us this?" Cole asked suspiciously. Freeman looked uncomfortable. "I was not a good man back then," he said quietly. "I did things I'm not proud of, hurt people I should have protected. I have been trying to make amends where I can. When I heard about you helping that woman, heard the story of how you sent Caldwell on a false trail, I thought you deserved to know it worked. She is safe. She can stop running." He put his hat back on, nodded to them both, and turned to leave. Cole called after him. "Freeman, thank you. This means more than you know." The old man nodded once more and rode away. Sarah stood frozen on the porch, Cole's hand tight around hers. She felt like she could not quite catch her breath, like the world had tilted sideways. "He is dead," she whispered. "He is dead," Cole confirmed. He turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. "Sarah, you are free. Truly, completely free. He cannot hurt you anymore." The tears came then, huge, racking sobs that shook her whole body. Cole gathered her close, holding her, while she cried out years of fear and trauma and the terrible relief of knowing it was finally over. Sam appeared on the porch, looking worried, and Cole gathered him into the embrace too, the three of them holding each other while Sarah wept. When the storm finally passed, Sarah pulled back and wiped her eyes. She looked at her husband, at her son, at the ranch spread out before them. "I am free," she said, testing the words. "I have been free for 5 years, but now I know it. He cannot reach me, cannot take this away. This life is mine. This family is mine. This happiness is mine." "It always was," Cole said gently, "from the moment you chose it. But I'm glad you have this closure, glad you know for certain." That night, after the children were asleep, Cole and Sarah sat on the porch, watching the stars wheel overhead. The prairie stretched dark and infinite around them, and somewhere a coyote sang. "Do you ever regret it?" Sarah asked. "Taking me in that day? Your life would have been simpler without me." Cole turned to look at her, and his eyes were full of love. "My life would have been empty without you, Laura's," he said. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Sarah. You and our children. You are everything. I would make the same choice 1,000 times over." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. "I love you," she said. "I will never stop being grateful that I walked into that general store, that you saw me, really saw me, and decided I was worth saving." "You were always worth saving," Cole said. "You just needed someone to believe it enough to help you believe it too." The years continued to unfold, each one richer than the last. Sam grew tall and strong, with his father's way with horses and his mother's gentle heart. Grace was smart and determined, learning to read at 4 and announcing at 6 that she was going to be a doctor, and neither Cole nor Sarah laughed because they knew their daughter could do anything she set her mind to. In 1880, Sarah gave birth to another son, whom they named Daniel. He was a surprise, coming 8 years after Grace, but a welcome one. He was a happy, easy baby who grew into a mischievous boy with a gift for getting into trouble and talking his way out of it. The ranch continued to prosper. Cole's reputation grew, and they began breeding horses in addition to training them, developing a line known for intelligence and endurance. They built a new barn, hired more hands, bought more land. Cole became a respected voice in the community, serving on the town council and helping to bring the railroad through Redemption Springs. Sarah joined the school board and fought for better education for all children regardless of background. She used her own story, carefully edited, to advocate for the rights of freedmen and women, for equal treatment under the law, for justice. She was respected and liked, and only a few people dared to mutter about her past, and those people found themselves ostracized by the rest of the community. Miguel and Rosa had 3 children of their own, and their family remained close with Cole and Sarah's, the children growing up more like cousins than neighbors' kids. They celebrated holidays together, helped each other with harvest, grieved together when Rosa's oldest from her first marriage died in a riding accident. Life was not always easy. There were droughts and hard winters and years when money was tight. There were illnesses and injuries and the normal struggles of raising children and running a business. But through it all, Cole and Sarah faced everything together, their partnership growing stronger with each challenge overcome. On their 15th wedding anniversary in 1887, Cole took Sarah back to the high point where he had proposed. The children were with Miguel and Rosa for the weekend, giving them rare time alone. They stood looking out over the prairie, older now, marked by sun and work and the passage of years, but still fundamentally them. Cole's hair was starting to gray at the temples. Sarah had lines around her eyes from squinting into the sun and laughing. They were solid and real and permanent. "Do you remember what I said when I proposed?" Cole asked. "Every word," Sarah said. "You said the land was harsh but honest and beautiful and free. You said you could not offer me an easy life, but you could offer me partnership and love and home." "I meant every word," Cole said, "and I have tried to live up to that promise every day. Have I succeeded?" Sarah turned to face him, taking both his hands in hers. "You have given me more than I ever dreamed possible," she said. "You gave me freedom and safety and love. You gave me children and a home and a place in the world. You gave me back myself. You have succeeded beyond measure, Cole Dawson." He kissed her there on the hilltop with the prairie wind whipping around them, and it felt like their wedding day all over again, like every day since, like a promise renewed. "Here is to 15 more years," Cole said, "and 15 after that, and 15 after that, until we are old and gray and can barely walk but are still holding hands." "That sounds perfect," Sarah said, and it was. It does. The years rolled on. Sam married a rancher's daughter named Elizabeth and took over more of the day-to-day operations of the ranch. Grace did become a doctor, studying back east and returning to Redemption Springs to open a practice, the first female doctor in 3 counties. Daniel followed his father into horse training, showing even more natural talent than Cole. Cole and Sarah became grandparents, first to Sam and Elizabeth's twins, then to more grandchildren as the years passed. They watched their children build their own lives, their own families, and took joy in every milestone. In 1895, Cole was diagnosed with a weak heart. The doctor, their daughter Grace, was frank about the prognosis. He had maybe 5 years, maybe a little more if he took it easy. Cole refused to slow down entirely, but he did step back from the hardest physical work, letting the younger men handle the dangerous horses while he focused on strategy and teaching. Sarah nursed him carefully, adjusting their diet, making sure he rested, refusing to let him overexert himself. She had not survived everything she had survived to lose him before she was ready, and she was determined to squeeze every possible moment from the time they had left. They made the most of those years. They took a trip to San Francisco, something they had always talked about but never done. They spent long evenings on the porch telling stories to grandchildren. They read together, talked together, sat in comfortable silence together. In the winter of 1900, Cole caught pneumonia. Grace did everything she could, but his weakened heart could not fight off the infection. He died on a cold January night with Sarah holding his hand, his children around his bed, his grandchildren sleeping in the next room. His last words were, "Thank you for walking into that general store." Sarah held him as he took his last breath and felt like part of her soul went with him. The grief was immense, a physical weight that made it hard to breathe. But Sarah had survived worse, and she had children and grandchildren who needed her, and she had promised Cole she would keep living, keep loving, keep choosing joy. She did. She stayed at the ranch, helping Sam run the operation, teaching Grace's children to cook, watching Daniel work magic with horses. She maintained the garden, attended church, participated in community events. She lived. On quiet evenings, she would sit on the porch and remember. The scared girl running across 3 states, the cowboy who had hidden her and sent her pursuer riding in the wrong direction, the love that had grown from that desperate moment into something eternal. She remembered every conversation, every kiss, every moment of the life they had built together. Sarah lived to be 83 years old, vital and sharp-minded until the very end. She died peacefully in her sleep on a warm summer night in 1929, surrounded by 3 generations of family in the house Cole had built for her. Her last thought before darkness took her was of that first kiss in the kitchen, after Miguel had told them to stop making moon eyes, when Cole had cupped her face so gently and asked permission. She remembered the taste of coffee and hope, the feeling of her broken heart learning to trust again, and she remembered Cole's voice, warm and certain. "You are brave. Whatever you are running from, whatever happened to you, you survived it, and you are still here. That takes strength." She had been strong. She had survived. She had lived a life of love and meaning and joy, and she was grateful for every single moment. At her funeral, Sam read a passage she had written years ago, a sort of memoir she had worked on in her later years. The final paragraph brought tears to everyone's eyes. "I was born into slavery, and I ran toward freedom, not knowing if I would find it. What I found was better than freedom. I found love and partnership and a man who saw me as human when the world saw me as property. Cole Dawson gave me everything when he had no reason to, when I had nothing to offer but trouble and danger. He sent my pursuer riding in the wrong direction, and then he pointed me toward home. Every good thing in my life came from that choice he made to help a desperate woman in a general store in Redemption Springs, Texas. I hope my children and grandchildren remember this, that we are all one choice away from changing someone's life, from being the person who helps someone else find their way home. Choose kindness. Choose courage. Choose love. It matters more than you know. They buried her next to Cole on the hill overlooking the ranch, with the prairie stretching endlessly on all sides and the sky so big it could hold all the love and all the joy and all the sorrow of a life well lived. The grandchildren planted wildflowers around the graves, the same kind Cole used to bring Sarah when they were courting. The ranch stayed in the family for generations, each new owner learning the story of Sarah and Cole, of the runaway and the cowboy, of how love had bloomed in the harsh beauty of the Texas prairie. It became legend, told and retold, a reminder that even in the darkest times there are good people who will risk everything to help those in need, and that sometimes the running leads you exactly where you are meant to be. And on summer evenings, when the wind blows just right across those graves on the hilltop, locals swear you can hear guitar music floating on the breeze, Miguel's songs about love and longing, still serenading the couple who proved that love can conquer fear, that kindness can defeat cruelty, and that freedom once found is worth any price. The wildflowers bloom there every spring, year after year, bright and persistent and beautiful, just like the love story they commemorate, a love that started with a desperate woman and a compassionate cowboy and grew into something that changed not just their lives, but the lives of everyone they touched, rippling outward through time like circles on water, endless and eternal.